Hi there, and welcome to InsideTracks.co.uk, the website and YouTube channel that helps you to trade smarter. Please, if you do like this video, subscribe and like or comment and let me know how I can get better. So what I think we're going to look at today is when should I follow the money? And I suppose the question that underlies that particular question is, does the market always know best? And I can quite simply answer that question with, no, it doesn't. But it knows better than most of us, and it knows a lot better than most of us under certain circumstances. So let's look and see what those circumstances might be. So when does the market know best? Well, generally speaking, the very first point on the list is when the information available is limited. You might well say, well, when's it limited? Everybody's got the same amount of information, haven't they? And the answer to that question is no, we don't all have the same amount of information. If you consider a two-year-old race, a stakes race, where none of those two-year-olds have run, there is no published data, therefore, about how good they are. They could be fantastic, they could be useless. We do go on the available data, which is, generally speaking, breeding. Has the horse got the breeding for giving it a good chance over this course and distance and under these conditions? The second, obviously, piece of information that's published is, or can be published, is how much was paid for that a horse. Often you will see beside in the form 2,000 guineas, blah blah blah, and of course that is information that you can glean. Of course, you know the jockey, you know the trainer, and generally speaking, again, they will have some background and some form in terms of bringing two-year-olds and having success with two-year-olds, for instance, on their first run. And I suppose there is other snippets of information that you can get around, which might help you from other sources. But generally speaking, those sources will be relatively difficult to get to, or maybe even have to pay for those services. So what about then the gambling community? What happens to the professional gamblers? What will they have, and how can they have information that you don't have? Well, of course, with two-year-olds, they could be professional people in their Land Rovers, up every morning with their binoculars, looking at how Charlie Appleby's runners are performing, and they'll be looking at the strings as they go out, and they'll see a bunch of two-year-olds go out, and they'll see one that's run already and has some form, and they'll see that one running with a couple of that haven't run, and they'll see how they do, and they'll say, okay, great, well, there you go, that was a three-year-old, a two-year-old who's had a couple of runs, and maybe got a handicap mark of, say, 76, and that one there that hasn't run yet was giving it a jolly good race, and therefore we know how to benchmark this runner. What possible form could this horse have? So the information is very limited, and I'll just give you an example of that. So here you go. Here was today's racing at Chepstow, and we can see it's a three-year-old plus race, actually, a stakes race. Some of these guys had run 5 times. It's no Ocean. It's got a handicap mark of 68. So there is some form in the race, but 68 is not a fantastic mark to have. We see there are others that haven't run at all. A couple of them, one from Rafe Beckett's stable, out of a good sire and half brother, as I say. You know, we're getting this now from the breeding. So you know, could be something. Could be anything really. And again, we're seeing that it's got a good stable. And one to note. Why does he say one to note? Because we're one to note in the market. One to note in the market because someone out on the gallops looking at Rafe Beckett's string will have seen wherewithal out there training, and will have some view as to its capability. Is it going to beat 68 and so on, and probably, but will it beat some of these others? Now, obviously, we've got the favourite here. Favourites coming in at around about evens, predicted, forecast, on the morning of this was this morning. So basically, I got this from this morning. Severiana, John Gosden, very, very good trainer, able to do really well with the new to the racetrack horses. Rab Havlin, excellent jockey, stable jockey, apart from Frankie Dettori, who comes and nicks all the best rides. And we see that he's won unchallenged, been off 6 months, and likely to improve. But how likely to improve? And over those 6 months, how has his training been going? Well, of course, if you're out on the gallops again and you're watching John Gosden's team, then you will have a very good view as to how much improvement this horse is going to give, and what kind of a handicap mark, if it's going to get a handicap mark, it might have. By the way, the other component that you might want to look at, not easy to actually get to, is with some of these newcomers, they will have entries in races for the future, and that can be a very good indication as to how well they're thought of at home. They've got for instance, at the beginning of the season, they're running over 1 mile 2, and they've got an entry in Derby. You'll know that they're pretty well thought of, whereas other horses won't have those types of entries. So that's another thing to look for, that you can actually find published. So we have this horse. We think that this is a good horse, promising individual, blah, blah. We're not really sure about this particular horse, wherewithal, and the betting looks like at the moment that Severiana will have a jolly good chance of winning, but an evens chance, a coin toss. Let's just have a quick look at the result. So we see in the result that Seven Aya, I can't even say the name of the horse, but Seven Aya basically was supposed to be evens at the start of the day. Clearly, when it actually opened, it opened very, very much shorter. Significant professional money coming in, and the horse actually went off at 1 to 2, which means that 3/4 of the money will have been on this horse, and it won. And how well did it win? Well, the money said that it was going to win easily, and it did. And when you look at the race, it won very, very easily. So that's what you can see. You can see when there isn't a lot of information out there, there may be bits and pieces of information you can gather together, but ultimately the market and the additional information they have will know what's going on. And if the market is going that way significantly, then you will be not very sensible to ignore that fact. So when the information available is limited, you can be sure that someone's got more than you have, and it's unpublished, and they will be betting on it. And if there's enough of it that's very positive, then you'll see big movements in the market for these horses that have only run once or never run at all. Then you'll see horses coming from known yards. Now, if you read my newsletter, by the way, you can get the newsletter, sign up for it free. I give tips on different horses like naps and back to lays and place value and false favourites and others. And I give as much as I can in terms of information. But one of the known yards that I talk about and I have a video on as well is Sir Mark Prescott. Have a little look at what he does and how he operates. So here we can see a horse running at Chelmsford, and it's a horse that's going from the Sir Mark Prescott stable. And we know that when a horse opens up at 11 to 8 and winds up at 4 to 6, and in fact in the morning of the race, Battle of Paradise was more like a 2 to 1 shot. So as money came for it in the morning, it opened at 11 to 8 and went in over the betting period to 4 to 6. You have certain known stables where if you see a horse coming out from that stable, it starts getting the stable staff start putting in on their tenors and 15 quids and 20 quids in the morning on Betfair, for instance. Then as the day builds up, it will open up quite a lot shorter because the money mainly is positive money for the horse. May not be huge amounts, but it's positive money. So it starts steaming, opens the betting at 11 to 8, and as the odds start tumbling, so more and more money comes for it, and you can see this kind of major drop. I mean, it doesn't seem like a lot, but because that's favourite, 11 to 8 to 4 to 6 is a big amount of money will have gone on that horse. And I would say it's because it comes from this fella, who is a known participant in supporting his own horses. So you can see that there are horses from known yards. Watch out for those yards. Watch out for them coming with horses that start off in the morning, coming in a few points, a few percent. Generally speaking, what I find with Sir Mark Prescott is that his horse will be quoted in the at the races in the morning at sort of 6 or 7, 8 to 1, something like that. And then during the night or during the early morning or the morning, it will shorten into 4 or 3 to 1. And then when the betting really starts getting going, an hour before, and then obviously, as I've always told you guys, 10 minutes before, you'll only have about 20% of the total money going onto that race having been bet. It's 80% of the money comes in the last 10 minutes, and probably about 50% of that, 50% of the 80%. In other words, 5/8 comes on in the last 5 minutes. So it's in those times when you need to be watching and seeing the continual support of that horse, and the big money coming in there will be in the know. Final one is where a betting coup is being executed. And I'll show you an example of that. So here we have the 5 o'clock at York just a week ago, and we saw a horse called Sharmad, and it was Peter Fahey, who's a trainer who is from Ireland. And he had sent over this runner, and it was the only one he'd sent over to York. And the night before, I remember looking at the card and seeing that Sharmad was there. It was about 8 to 1, and had reasonable form. And when we looked at the form more closely, we saw that the form was okay, not too bad, but was being developed, if you like. You could see it was being developed. And what I mean by developed, it means that the horse was being put into races which he wasn't necessarily going to win, but where it had a good chance of getting race fit. And then it came over, and that 8-1 didn't last long. And during the morning, it came in, and it was an own steamer. And then it got to the course, and we saw that 4-1 opening then was all taken, and the horse wound up at 7-2. If you saw how the race developed, the horse was obviously had a very, very good chance. Clearly was going to come in the top three, and you could see that the jockey was riding for his life in the last furlong. When it says hard ridden, that is exactly what happened. It was extremely hard ridden and got home by a neck, which is fair enough and perfectly acceptable, and it beat an okay horse. So you could see that this horse had all the makings. When you were looking at it the night before, you could see why is someone sending a horse over from Ireland, the only one that they're sending over, and it's got reasonable form. Then you see it steaming in the morning, coming from 8s to an opening show of 4s, and then you see that support continuing with some decent money going on to it. Again, the other thing that's a bit of a giveaway as well, apprentice handicaps where this sort of thing happens are quite interesting, because the apprentices can be quite different in their standard, and the Irish, when they send these raiders over and operate these coups, they put decent jockeys on, the ones that they can rely on to bring the horse home. So there you go. That was a well executed coup, and made Peter Farhi and his supporters a very decent amount of money. So I've given you these three areas. There are probably other areas where the market knows best, and generally speaking, I put a little note on my newsletter. If I give you a nap, and the nap is drifts by more than 33%, then I would say, somebody knows something about the horse, and they know better than I do. I'll be napping that horse based on the facts I've got in front of me. If I see a horse that I've napped that drifts, certainly if it goes beyond 33% and I'm into the 50% arena, I will really question whether that horse is there to try or not, or whether there's some other reason, but that I don't know of. So it works for drifting as well. But when you see a horse and you want to follow the money, again, you can follow the drift, by the way. I probably haven't talked about that, and maybe some of those out there are going, why don't you talk about the drift? Yeah, of course. The market knows best in both ways. I'm saying follow the money down, but you can always follow the money out, because when you see horses that are sort of 3 or 4-1 and they drift out to 8-1, it is very rare that those win. But I tend to want to go for the ones that are coming in, because we're talking about very specific instances here. Drifting can happen in almost any race. In fact, backing it can, but I'm talking about this very limited areas here. The information available is limited, and generally speaking, that's 2-year-old, 3-year-old stakes races where there's little information about the form. In fact, some of the races, they'll all be first time out, and so it's totally you have nothing to go on in terms of form, and therefore any information that these professionals have gleaned from the gallops will go into the betting profile, and of course a lot of the time form will say, we like this one, it's 200,000 guinea yearling, blah 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 blah. But keep an eye on the market, by the way, because they'll know even better than time form. And then there's horses that come from known yards. When you see a horse coming out from a yard that's known to want to support their horses, then look out for those and follow the money when they go on it, because often that's the way the yard is maintained, and the only reason they're in business is they don't tend to produce hundreds of winners, but they do. When they do produce a winner, they tend to be benefiting quite well from it. And look out for those betting coups, horses coming from particular owners, horses coming from particular countries, I mean, particularly Ireland, sending over horses. I think that they do that quite a lot, and you can spot them a mile off. They come across to the courses with maybe only one runner, and then you see the prices drop. And of course, you know, it's £2,500 the winner, which hardly pays them to bring the horse across, but it's much more than that, because they've got a decent amount of money on, and they're making a nice 50k or so on the betting. So why don't you make a bit of money as well? Okay, as far as I'm concerned, there's probably lots more areas I could go across, but that would bore you. But anyway, those three give you betting opportunities. Keep your eyes out for those three situations. Probably the one that's going to happen more often than not is the sort of the 2-year-old, 3-year-old stakes races, where you have little or no information, and then that's when the market begins to have a slight advantage over you, because they will have been out in the gallops. They will have been looking at how these horses compare to others in the string. Please subscribe and like if you do. Leave a comment if you think that I could improve. And I wish you all the best, and hope your trading goes well. Cheers. Bye.